Welcome to Solosaurus, a podcast about one-player board and card games and giant thunder lizards. Solosaurus is sponsored by Game Castle, where the games are great and the memories are even better. Visit them at shop.gamecastle.com, that's castle with a K, and enter Solosaurus10 for 10% off your order, or click the link in the description. And now, here's your host, stomping through the underbrush, Michael Eckenfels.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Solosaurus Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Eckenfels, and it's not a numbered podcast. I haven't said number because I'm not sure where in the scheme of things this is going to fall. But I do have a special guest here. This is Mr. Jerry Baker III. Is that correct, sir?
I claim to be the third because I think that sounds more ostentatious. You know, whenever you hear somebody who's the third of something, that means that they were worthy enough to be named after somebody else. But I know for a fact I'm a junior, so there has to be another Jerry somewhere in our family.
Perfect. Okay, well, good. And welcome to this podcast, and thank you for taking time to record. And in case anybody's not heard of you, which I can't imagine because I have for a long time, you are one of the hosts of the Board Game Snobs Podcast. And
I'm one of the stars. I'm the star.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Yes,
You're right.
I'm almost going to correct you there.
You do say that in some of the episodes, if I remember right. That's perfect. You record that with Gabi and Enrique. Is that correct? Am I getting those names right?
Sorta. Yeah.
Sorta.
Gabriella, my host. Yes, he goes by Gabi because his family didn't realize that's a female name here in America. But Gabi is the main host, the largest of the hosts, and then Enrique is more like I don't know what he is, a mascot, altar boy. I don't know what he is.
Altar boy.
He's a wayward child that we allow onto the show.
Well, that's very kind of you. So we are here. We're not going to keep the normal Solosaurus structure. It's just going to be a discussion between Jerry and I, but we're also going to have a top 10 solo games list, which is interesting to me because I've not really wrapped my head around this before and tried to come up with a list. Have you done this kind of thing, Jerry? Have you done a top 10 before?
Chronically. I top 10. I love categorizing and hierarchies. Yes, anything of that nature. My top 10 movies. I have opinions about literally everything. I have 2 children, and I can tell you which one I like the most.
And so, I know that feeling. I have 2 myself, so yeah, I understand that completely.
And you know which one. There is a one. If the house is on fire, listen. You know that if the house is on fire, which one you would go to first. Not necessarily your favorite, but there's one that you just feel is more competent and confident enough that this one can float their own boat. Right.
That's a hard choice, though. At least with mine. I mean, I'm surprised. I've actually got a son who's in a doctorate program for occupational therapy. Of all things, I mean, I never imagined in a million years I'd ever have a kid who would have a doctor in front of their name. And my daughter is a visualization major. So she's, it's like, Well, okay. Well, I guess the question really is, which one of these 2 could support me in an old age home when the time comes?
That OT, you ever have a stroke, they can rehab you.
That's true too. And that's expensive, man. Jeez.
It very much is.
Well, I wanted to ask you a few questions. First off, you told me earlier you have 300 episodes of the Board Game Snobs podcast. And when did you start that? Was that, I can't remember. Was it 2018, 2019, something like that?
It was September of 2017. Because I recall the summer of 17. That sounds like your Yorkshire.
No, that's 3 dogs. There's 2 Aussie Shepherd minis and 1 mutt. That's my daughter's dog, who we're watching while she's finishing her last semester of school.
I have ordered an Australian Shepherd. I'd say that sounds weird, like you get them off of Amazon. But I have one almost ready, almost weaned that I am going to.
Oh,
yes.
No.
I had 2 border collies puppies, and one of them got unceremoniously disposed of by a mountain lion because I live out in the the wild. I'm kind of a survivalist type. I know I don't look it,
So
but
Wiley, Texas, like outside of Dallas, kind of.
well, no, it's in the wilds of Oklahoma. Like Oklahoma's
okay.
Oklahoma's the. Yes, that's where my family's actually from. My mother and father were from the Chickasha area. I'm actually in the southeastern. We're in the close to Texas, close to Louisiana, Arkansas area. All the hillbillies. Deer capital of the world. Deer capital of the world.
Perfect. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your dog there. That sucks.
Well, it was the lesser of the two. Out of the two, if I had to pick one, that would have been the one I would have chosen to get eaten. So that's the good thing about lists, having hierarchies.
That's a good point. And I guess it comes down to the 10. Well, that's the problem with the top 10 solo game list, though. It's like I've got 300 freaking games, and wrapping my head around this, I had to actually go to BGG and do some research on best solo games, not just looking at my collection and going, yeah, that is a good one. That's a good one. How am I going to do this? And polishing it down. I've included several in the list that I don't have anymore, but are near and dear to my heart and always have been. Some that I do definitely have on my shelf, but I haven't played in a while. They're still important to me. But see, being able to say, if I can only rescue 5 of them, which 5 would that be? I don't know. That's a little different, I guess. I mean, if we're talking like Midara, unintentional malum, which weighs about 65 pounds versus coffee roaster.
Unintentional malum sounds like a disease.
It is. Well, with that one. I'm actually selling it. I had gotten a copy off the Facebook market. I can't even talk. Facebook Marketplace, and I ended up never playing it. It was unpunched, and it's just one of those gigantic games where it's like a dungeon crawl kind of adventure. There's tons of cards, tons of pieces. It's a huge box, not quite Gloomhaven or Frosthaven size, but pretty close. And that's kind of the direction I've been going in gaming wise recently. I used to be a huge war gamer. That's how I got started gaming way back when, and now not so much. I mean, I've loved like Frostpunk and Skyrim adventure game, Stars of Ikarios, Aetherfields, you name it. I love those big box adventure type games, but I just don't have room for the thing. So that would be another consideration. Housefire, which one would you rescue? I don't know. Which one's going to throw my back out trying to rescue it, I guess.
Yeah, that's the problem is some of these solo games require a little bit more commitment than others. And some you just they're easy to take out. They're portable and less difficult to manage, just like certain children.
Very true. Now, between you three, or you the star, of course, and Gabi and everybody else that's kind of like hangers on to your fame, how many games do you guys have total? Just curious.
That's kind of a personal question, but
gosh,
I have. So I did not have the room for board gaming when I started board gaming back in 2014, and so I lived vicariously through Gabi by utilizing his extra bedroom and purchasing Kalex shelves and putting them in his room, and then putting my board games there. So my wife never knew about my collection. And so recently, I moved and we built a house, and I have an office of my own. And so I have had to bring all of my games from Gabi over to my home. And I would say Gabi has probably a Kalex shelf full of games and probably a half a closet of other games, of party games that he just has, that are probably his. I still have a lot of my games over at Gabi's. At my home, if we had a camera on, I could show you, because I have 3 Kalex shelves behind me to the ceiling that are full, and I don't know where the rest are at. Like, I just have stuff scattered. So if I had to estimate, I would say I try to maintain about 100 games. But obviously that doesn't work out for me. I go overboard. So I'm always fluctuating. Yeah. I think really all that you need is you really just need probably 50 games if we were being realistic.
Yeah, I think you're right. As far as, it's hard because I probably had closer to 500-600 by this time last year. And last year I went kind of on a purchasing tear for a lot of reasons. I've told my audience about this before, but you don't know this, obviously. My mother got sick last year.
I've never heard of you until today.
Yeah, I just kind of randomly chose somebody off the internet and said, "Hey, you want to record a podcast?" And he's like, "I guess." How much do you pay?
I thought this was a dinosaur podcast.
Yeah.
I have a top 10 list of my favorite dinosaurs. So this board game thing is throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah, we just, that's the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I've had probably 500-600 games at some point, and I bought a bunch last year because my mom was sick and not doing well, and I was depressed. And, it's just kind of this cathartic moment when you get a board game in the mail. I'm sure you know the feeling. I kind of went overboard with it, and now it's like I'm still trying to cull this collection. I've got a pile next to me that I'm getting rid of, and I still have a closet literally full. And I don't like using the word literally, except this case it's true, absolutely, from floor to ceiling. And then I have a hutch full, and then I've got a square shelf thing that's full of books and games, and I've got another shelving unit full of games, and it's just everywhere. And I don't think I'll ever be in control of it, but 50 is an admirable number. I wish I could pare it down to that point, but even now, every time I cull it, it's like I really don't want to get rid of that game. I've had it for 5 years, say, but I'll probably never get it to the bloody table. But I don't want to get rid of it. It's the potential that really sets it off for me. So I don't know. My wife would be more than happy if I just got rid of every single one of them. I don't know what yours is.
Is she not a board gamer?
No. Oh gosh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Did you marry a board gamer?
I did. No, not particularly. She's a board gamer in the realm of, well, we homeschool our kids. I say we, like I actually do anything. I like, but she loves the board games that are educational or in some way, or have some sort of benefit, I guess you could say, because I would argue that all board games have a benefit. I mean, I'd love to play. You play Game of Thrones with your kids. You teach them to always pay their debts. But
true, yeah.
Like some of the games that she has that teaches like narrative language skills and things of that nature. So she's a board gamer in that regards. And party games, we have people over a lot. We do a lot of party games. Mm-hmm. But as for actual medium heavyweight Euros or anything like that, no, not really. Unfortunately, every game I've ever played with my wife of that ilk, she has beaten me soundly. I have never, any game I have just begged her to play with me, from Scythe to Concordia, anything I've talked her into, to the Magnificent. She just beats me every single time with very little effort, and it's very odd.
That's emasculating, isn't it?
Not really, because I have other things for which I'm that exemplify my masculinity.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Yeah,
I was joking, of course.
No,
yeah, there's zero interest in this, and that's why I'm a solo gamer, and that's why I kind of embrace this whole solo thing to begin with, and not just from that standpoint, but also from the storytelling that these games do, especially some of the solo RPGs, which I started getting more into as well. And I started another podcast where I'm doing narrative playthroughs of games. I've only got 2 episodes out there for right now because I just started it, but I'm still leaning that way more and more, just because I enjoy this part of it where you're just, generating a story as you play. And I just love that kind of thing. So I just wish there were more around here that did, because then we could try a co-op game, something like that. But oh well. Well, what else did I want to ask you? There was something else. And I didn't write my questions down like a professional, because I'm not a professional in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what made you want to take this leap into podcasting?
Failure and death.
Okay.
So essentially, I had the idea to start the Board Game Snobs Podcast, the Golden Geek nominated, not yet won Golden podcast.
Perfect.
That I wanted to do like a website that did written reviews, because writing was more along what I thought I was good at. And then I quickly discovered, because we have a defunct website, that I was not very good at it, and then was going to try my hand at perhaps doing YouTube videos, and to be honest, you can be a complete and total loser and have a YouTube channel and have 40,000 subscribers and your videos get a million views for some reason. I don't quite understand that. But needless to say, my co-host at the time decided that he was not very quote unquote photogenic and he didn't want to do YouTube, which really holds me back because you've probably seen our Instagram. I think that I'm quite good looking and gregarious
Right.
and able to just I'm not saying that there's no beautiful people in YouTube board game reviewing, but I'm just saying is that they're getting older. Like it's me and Mike DeLisio and my, but
Right.
anyways, so around this time, what got me into actually board gaming was my father had recently passed away. My older sister had recently passed away. So I was in quite a bout of just isolation. And that's really what got me back in the board game was solo board gaming. And I started off as a war gamer, so to speak.
Mhm.
And eventually that transitioned into meeting up with people who had, introducing other board games to other people, and then eventually meeting Gabi, now the host of the podcast. And we had this dumb idea to do a podcast, and the first 20 episodes were awful because I tried to it was solely my fault. I wanted it to be professional and organized and structured. I wanted it to be the Board Game Barrage. And
Mhm.
Board Game Barrage, which is uber successful because they are structured and organized, and they're able to do that. But we were not, mainly because we ramble so much and we just say what comes onto our mind. And so one day, Gabi had the idea of, hey, let's just do one live. Let's just record it and not edit it and just put it out there. And whatever we do is what we do. And we just let the podcast do its thing. And so that's why we end up putting out about 280 more podcasts after that. That's just been completely us just not really structured. We know what we're going to talk about in terms of the game we had just played, and that's about it. And occasionally one of us will try to I'll write down some hilarious joke that I'm going to do on the podcast, and then it doesn't pass the snuff because I fancy myself the Norm Macdonald of board game podcasting, but Gabi edits out all of my stuff because apparently it's inherently offensive.
Well, yeah, this day and age it can be. I guess it depends. I mean, even jokes are jokes and meant to be humorous, they can still be taken.
Well,
that
mine
way.
aren't jokes. Mine are serious. These are
really?
what I think and feel. But that's just how that goes. But that's all right.
I as I said, I started as you did as a wargamer back in when I was about 8 years old. I bought my first game, and I have been at it ever since. And solo games have not really been a thing until the early 80s, some of which I actually have on my list here that we'll get to here soon. I'm sure we're almost 20 minutes in, and you're talking about going off on any tangent, and here we go doing this, and that's absolutely fine with me. I kind of like that kind of thing.
Solo games had for the longest time this aura of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's like people who just, if you were a solo gamer, you there was a certain picture in your mind of somebody who solo games. They lived in their mom's basement.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the older, I came to find that a lot of the older war gamer types, they were all overweight middle-aged men that they are upset because they didn't get drafted because they had flat feet or something, and this was their chance to relive the glory days of like they're just as good as Patton. I could organize D-Day as well, and so I'm going to move these chits around, and every Wednesday night I'm defeating Hitler. That's what a lot of these, and really, and so, and you go down that rabbit hole, and you realize that term that I think Sam Healy, formerly of the Dice Tower, used to say grognards.
Mm-hmm.
To refer to war gamers, and I thought grognards. I don't know what that is, but then you meet one, and you're like, "That's what that is." I have seen grognards, and I was almost a grognard. I had cargo shorts and baseball caps, and I was wearing you have to have some sort of facial hair, and you slowly slip into that persona. You become the thing. You put on the ring, and you become the thing that you hate. And next thing you know, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. You're eating at the Golden Corral, so you can hurry up and get home, and play your third run through of the Queen of the Sky. So that game's on your list.
It is, yeah.
I knew it. I was taking a shot. I was feeling you out. I thought, okay,
son of a. No, I'm kidding. Back in my day, you see, back when we played board games like this.
Well, that was like one of my favorite shows. Was the Memphis Belle.
Oh, the movie. Yeah, that was a good movie. Matthew Modine.
And I'm super excited for the new series coming out.
Is there a series? I didn't know that.
There's a new series. So they did Band of Brothers, which is like one of the greatest. Then they did the Pacific. Well, now they're doing another one that's like for planes, and it's got the guy who was I can't think of his name, the Irish actor, and I'm going to be very angry. He'll come to me later, but he was the Joker in the new Batman.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I didn't watch that. The one with the sparkly vampire.
I love that sparkly vampire. that really messed me up. That show should not have been that good, and I should not have liked him that much. But that was
it is what it is. If you like it,
I did not want to like it. I'm a Christian Bale guy. I'm like Christian Bale / I like Michael Keaton, because that was like one of the first. I remember watching that in the theater.
Yeah, me too.
And just loving that.
Yep.
And I did not want to be swept away by this boy band member that's Batman, that's brooding, that's upset. He goes home after beating up people at night and takes his Zoloft and listens to Death Cab for Cutie or something, and then goes. I mean, it's one of these guys you just don't want to like. And I just love the show. That should not have been that good. Plus, Paul Dano. I love Paul Dano. Paul Dano is like, me and Paul Dano look a lot alike.
Okay, fair enough.
We do.
I don't know what you look like. That's fine.
Paul Dano's like a generic version of me.
Okay. Well, you're the star, right? I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, but Paul Dano, I mean, like, he got all the breaks. That's how it goes. Like, there's always somebody who misses out, that misses their boat.
Yeah,
and I've just, I'm just a fledgling star that's burnt too bright too quickly.
I think of that too sometimes. Like, I didn't get interested in acting until like 2008, something like that. Well, when I was well into my life and into my family and everything, and not knowing, what I really wanted to be when I grew up until a few years before that. And the idea of moving to Hollywood or doing anything crazy like that was far beyond me. But then I look at somebody like Matthew Perry, rest in peace, who's 2 days younger than me, or was anyway. And it's just like, wow, pathless travel. I don't know. Path not taken. I don't know.
What acting did you mentioned? Was it theater acting?
I did a lot of theater. I actually did do some independent films in Texas. There was one that went to Sundance, but I never heard about it again. So, there was also, here's one for you. Have you ever seen Manos, The Hands of Fate?
No, I guess I haven't.
Okay.
That sounds familiar.
It might be. It's a terrible, terrible movie. It came out in 1966, I think, done by a fertilizer salesman on a bet that he could make a film. Anybody could make a movie. Well, he couldn't. This became a cult classic in the 90s when Mystery Science Theater 3000 did a number on it. And you can still see that on YouTube if you look it up. Now, the reason I bring it up is because a producer guy that I know in Houston decided to do a prequel to it called Manos, The Rise of Torgo, and I was in it, as well as my daughter. So that is that's not really a big claim to fame at all. I know people who are actors, though, a friend of mine, Dave, I acted with him before. Dave Maldonado, he was the captain of the rig in that Marky Mark movie about the rig that blew up. I can't remember the name of it now. Wow. And he also was in the Tomorrow War, played the Secretary of Defense, and got to ball out Chris Pratt. So I gave him crap on Facebook for yelling at Star-Lord. I thought that was kind of funny. That's the limit of my of my reach. So, you know, I love the stage, though. That's a lot of fun because you're always doing something. Whereas I did a commercial once where my call time was like 7:45 a.m. I was there at 7:30 and I didn't get called till 3:00. So, you know, that's the reality of that. It's not all that fun for me anyway, you know, and I didn't really have any desire to be a star. I just liked, I'm an introvert, but I'm an extroverted introvert, if that makes sense. So I that's why I do this podcasting thing, because I feel like I've got this energy that I need to like focus somewhere, and board gaming is kind of the way it's been lately for me. So
Deepwater Horizon.
That's it. Yep. Deepwater Horizon.
Deep water. And your boy Maldonado, shout out to him. He was also in a movie with the shiny vampire, The Devil All the Time. Which was
Oh,
yes,
man.
The Devil All the Time was an excellent film. He's
an enigma. He pops up in things that I never knew he was in. Like I was watching Tulsa King, which is a great little series, and he's one of the cops in it. I'm like, what, Dave? What are you doing? Or, you know, or in Greyhound, the movie with Tom Hanks about World War II destroyers. He was he was the medical officer. I'm like, dude, you had a scene with Tom Hanks. I know that guy.
Dave.
Yeah, good old Dave. I mean, we're not like best friends or anything, but I've known him for a while, and we still talk occasionally on Facebook. I'll send him a message making fun of him or saying, dude, why didn't you tell me you were in this show, or, you know, something like that. Anyway, that's the limit. And that's not, you know, he's an actor. He's somebody who hustles. He's somebody who works hard. He goes to auditions. He does all that kind of thing. I occasionally did that. I mean, I never really, like I said, had any desire to make that a career. I just was like this outlet to express myself. So that was the limit of that. Maybe we should start our top 10 list. What do you think?
It's whatever you want to do. I'm looking up this Manos Rise of Torgo. I know what I'm going to be doing.
I am so sorry. I'm one of the sheriff's deputies in that. I don't have any lines. The guy that did the movie did it the same as the first movie, which was to say a lot of jump cuts, a lot of awkwardness, a lot of bad lines, a lot of cheesy dialogue, and everything was dubbed because that's the way the first film was done. So he just decided to keep it and just run with it and do all of that. So it should come out as hilarious, hopefully, if you watch that.
You just described the Board Game Snobs. There you go. That's our
perfect. Yeah, well, you'll take it to heart. I think you'll enjoy it then if you watch it. I think it's on Amazon Prime still. I'm not sure, but you can find it somewhere, I'm sure. So let's talk about our top 10 games then. We're 30 minutes in. Why not, right? Let's talk some board games. And that's fine. We can go off on tangents too. That's absolutely fine. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You start.
You make me start because I'm going to talk about that damn game that you mentioned.
I know.
Number 10 is B-17 Queen of the Skies.
I knew it. I had it deep down. Deep down, I knew.
I liked that game back in the day. What can I say? So this came out in 1983, published by Avalon Hill, designed by Glenn Frank and Bruce Shelley. Bruce Shelley is an interesting name because he did a lot of computer war games back in the day. That's the only reason I recognize his name. But this, I think, I could be wrong, but I think it was the first dedicated solo board game. Do you know offhand? I should have asked you that before.
It was. I don't think it is.
Okay.
I'm going to check that real fast while you go on with it.
I think it was. I could be wrong. I remember reading that somewhere, and I tried to find it again for this episode, and I could not find that reference, so I could be wrong. But this was my first real solo board game, and I played the heck out of it. But the thing is about it, the only real meaningful decisions you get to make is just to put the names of the people in the crew that you want. And I would, of course, put my friends into it, and oh look, so-and-so got shot up over Rotterdam, or, you know, that was the extent of it. And it sounds kind of lame now when I think back about it, but it still has this certain nostalgic feel to it. And I would play it again. But it also, I mentioned this specifically because it also branched out and it evolved other ideas, other inspired other ideas, including Target for Today, Target for Tonight, and then one of my personal favorites, America Bomber, Evil Queen of the Skies, which is a different take on things where you're not piloting a B-17, but rather you fly for the German Air Force in a alternate world where the Germans won World War II and are now bombing the United States. So that's, and the designer, Greg Smith, I know him, he's a great guy. He actually talks about this in the book. He's like, this is not some kind of fantasy for people to, think, oh, world, Man in the High Castle kind of fun stuff. It's meant to be, oh my gosh, what if this happened? This could have been a real horrific thing.
Have you ever fantasized about bombing Baltimore? Well, you go.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I played through it once, and if you get successful and survive, then you have the chance of unlocking atomic attacks on America. And I remember clearly dropping a bomb on Chicago, just because that's what rolled up on the tables. And that's what these games are. They're all on rails. There's not many meaningful decisions to make.
You're just following orders. You can just say it.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I just do what I was told to do, man. So you roll on a table and it tells you to roll on another table and it tells you how much damage or what got hit or who got hurt or, that kind of thing. And then you roll on another table to see how many bombs fall within the target area, blah, blah, blah. And some people do not like that kind of thing, but I found it, and I didn't at some point, I was railing against this and thought this is horrible for a game idea, just because you don't decide what you're doing. You don't make any good choices. It's just rolling, and then mission done. But I think it's more of a narrative generator where it's like a book you're reading and it just kind of lays the story out for you. So when I changed my perspective on it, I had a new love for this kind of game. So that's my number 10, B-17 Queen of the Skies.
Yeah, the Nuremberg expansion of that game really livens things up. You just roll to see what kind of war crimes you committed.
Right, exactly.
But, I had to look. My number 10 is an old one as well. Unlike yours, although I did appreciate Queen of the Skies and Target for the Day, I did find that you're just rolling and looking things up in charts. If you want something a little more decision based and a little more, that's okay. I'm trained to pause, so Gabi will cut out all the. Anytime Enrique starts barking on our podcast, Enrique has Tourette's. And so occasionally he'll make noises, and we just have to cut him out. But that's okay. Like we don't mind. But Ambush from 1983. Ambush is a solo only game, and I believe it was published by Victory Games back in the day. It's a very I wouldn't say it's medium to heavyweight game where you are naming and kind of RPGing, getting the stats of your squadron together, of your guys. It's based in a World War II game where you're like a squad leader of like 8 guys, and you lead them out over this hexagon map, moving the chits across the board, and then doing, of course, you're rolling dice for checks for seeing if you spot the enemy and so forth. But it has one of the neatest little encounter sheets. It's these multiple little draw sheets that you look up a number, roll to see what the results was, and then you start flipping through this book and says, "Oh, look up page 673," and you read this encounter. And so once you've played through the game, you've seen most of the game. Of course, you can always go through and play it back, but your team levels up as you go through the game. There was numerous expansions after it, but there's never really been another game like Ambush besides Silver Star and its various other expansions like that. But a very good narrative game, very similar in the vein of Queen of the Skies, except Ambush is all about the decisions you make and moving your guys around. And so I think John Butterfield was the designer on that and the artist. But yes. Ambush is my number 10. And this is a game that every solo war gamer, or even just solo gamers at some point in time have come across, desperately deserves some sort of remake.
I agree. And it's funny because this is my number 4.
Oh, okay.
So I'll talk
there you go.
Excuse me. I'll talk some more about it when I get to that point. I don't want to go off on a rail. Well, what's going to stop us? I mean, it doesn't matter.
There you go.
But I'll talk more about that when I get to that point. But that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that game, because that definitely was a formative game for me. I want to say B-17 was my first real solo game, but this was the first real successful solo war game, I think. So much so that they had the 3 expansions, and then they made Battle Hymn, which was a separate game based in the Pacific Theater. But anyway, I don't want to go too far down the rails on that. All right, cool. Well, my number 9 is not a solo game, really, but it can be soloed, and I include it because it was such a staple of my teenage years, and it's Axis and Allies. 1981, Milton Bradley, designed by Larry Harris Jr., I believe. This was part of a Game Master series that Milton Bradley did back in the day. There included Broadsides and Boarding Parties, Conquest of the Empire, Shogun, which changed its name to Samurai Swords due to copyright issues. And I think there was one more. Oh, Fortress America, of course. So I remember getting Axis and Allies for Christmas my freshman year of high school, and I played the utter chaos out of it. I mean, I loved this game, and my friends did too. I was in junior ROTC back in high school, and had plenty of friends that wanted to play this kind of game, so I got plenty of chances to do that. But I loved playing it myself because I could figure strategies out and tried to see if this would work or that would work. And I was obsessed with this game for years. I would still play it, and the thing is, I actually got many of the derivatives of it. So Axis and Allies, Battle of the Bulge, Pacific 1940, Europe 1940, D-Day, Guadalcanal. I had all of them, and slowly but surely sold them off because I'm thinking, what am I doing? I don't need all these. But I did get Europe and Pacific 1940 back into my collection. And just because I want to eventually play a big board version of it with both the boards butted together. But anyway, Axis and Allies, the original, is in my number 9 for sure. I spent so many hours solitarying that game myself. Not a solo game, but still very easy to solo if you're not minding being a multi-handed player.
I have never played Axis and Allies. I do have a copy of it because it was growing up. Risk was always the game that we had, and I desperately wanted to play Axis and Allies. And for some reason, just never got hold of a copy. And I did everything that I could to kind of make Risk fun, because it's not, and you shouldn't force your children to play it. But I had my own modified version of Risk, and then because I house ruled everything. And then come to find out, basically, I had made my own Axis and Allies. So, but yeah, you mentioned Broadsides and Boarding Parties. There is a rumor, I'm not going to say who, but the gentleman who designed Alien, the new Alien game, Fate of the Nostromo, which I'm a big Alien fan. And it's not on this list, by the way. Scott Rogers, he had indicated that there might be a remake from Restoration Games of Broadsides and Boarding Parties, which is a wonderful. I'm big into the 1800 seafaring ship stuff. I love that.
That would be cool if there's a really good solo component to it. I remember as you were saying that, I remember thinking there's actually, if I remember right, the card play component to the game where you had to choose your maneuvers ahead of time and then just play them out in a certain order. I can't remember exactly, but that was boring. But the best part was, of course, when you line up the ships and start firing away at each other with cannons and removing the crew members and blowing them the mass apart and all that fun stuff. God, I wish I still had that game.
Yeah, it's a great game. My number 9. And I am slowly getting away from the grognard war gaming aspect in this list, but it comes back. But one of my favorite solo games that is not an actual solo game, it happens to be the only UA Rosenberg game that I like. And caveat there, I have not played Feast for Odin. But so far, but all of other UA Rosenberg's games I have played, I found them to be just fine. But this particular game, the 2009 TMG version of it, is what I have at the Gates of Loyang. I absolutely love this game, and for some reason, the solo version of it works. And the Gates of Loyang has a very odd theme where you're just selling vegetables to people at the Gates of Loyang. this is like the most boring theme ever. It shouldn't be fun. And I came across this game. I can't remember where I got it at, but it's mainly a card game. You're literally laying out a card that represents a field and going, am I going to plant onions, pumpkins, or hay? What am I going to plant here? And you fill up your fields, and then the rest of the cards that you then can draft or buy are customers that just demand things. They want this many vegetables or this type of vegetables, and you're just accepting customers and trying not to make them angry, because literally if you don't get them what they want during that round, you put a token on them, which is basically that they're angry now. It's like they want to speak this, they carrying out on you, and
Right.
they want to speak to the manager. The solo on this game should not be that fun, but the solo and the 2 to 4 player aspect of it really doesn't change that much, except in the solo, you're drafting cards from this tableau. That's these cards down here are free. These ones cost $1. These ones cost $2. And when and how you draft them is like a puzzle on its own. And Gates of Loyang is not it's a 1 to 4 player game. It's one of these that I found myself enjoying way more just from the solo aspect than I actually have. But it's a wonderful game. The only Uwe Rosenberg game I like, and it's really the only game I like about vegetables. Like I am a strict. I do a carnivore diet. I'm not big on vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, potatoes, I think, are a vegetable.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I'm just not. I don't. I take vitamins and I eat meat and I drink whiskey, and that's what sustains me. But at the Gates of Loyang.
That's interesting. I had never heard of that game before. But there's plenty of games I've not heard of before, especially ones that aren't war games. I'm still kind of in that realm, but I'm also more appreciative of things that are not war games. So this sounds interesting, and I'm going to have to add that to my radar. I was looking at the prices on Board Game Geek, and it's like the geek market seems reasonable, $35, $45, but then Noble Knight Games, $90.
Yeah, that's the Z-Man. The Z-Man version of it is but it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Everybody has a TMG version of it that costs like $100, but it's not.
Wow.
It's all that same Clint. Who's the guy that does Uwe's art? That Clemens guy, Franz or Franz. He's German.
Clemens Franz. Yep, Clemens Franz.
Clemens Franz. I don't want to talk bad of your kinfolk, but they do that. They do that artwork that looks all the same. Like all of Uwe Rosenberg's people, all like, oh, here's Agricola, and all here they all have that same, like they're tired. All of those got people in, which I guess if you're in Agricola, you're starving, you're tired.
Yeah. I tried to like Agricola, I just never could. I never played the board game. I played the app on my iPad back in the day, and I just never got really excited about it. I tried to, but I just couldn't. What's the big deal about this game? Oh, this isn't very fun. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, you're not going to upset me or my heritage, because I know my last name's Germanic, but that's actually an adoptive name. My birth name is McKendrick, so I'm more in line with the Irish Scottish type of people.
So you're of my people.
Yes, I guess so. Yep.
Yes. I've got the same. I've got that Anglo-Saxon last name that's just, here's what your people used to do. But yeah, I'm 75% Irish.
Well, that's interesting. So you could probably get an Irish passport if you wanted to, unless you had one already.
I don't know why I want to. Yeah.
I say that because Facebook had recently started popping up ads. Is your great grandfather from Ireland? You can get an Irish passport. And what? Where did this come from? Freaking Facebook, of course.
It's just like when they were selling those plots of land so you could call yourself a lord and a lady.
You didn't buy one of those, did you?
No, I started a podcast so I could call myself a star.
Well, that's just as good. Yeah, there's more of a footprint in this. Okay, so my number 8 is going to be Shadows of Brimstone. It is a cooperative type of horror, Old West kind of game with cool minis and a horror theme, as I said, where you're acting as these Old West, I almost want to say stereotypes, but that's not the word. I mean, you got the lawman, you got the saloon girl, you've got the bandito, you got all these characters that are like from a spaghetti Western that you're playing, but you're playing by investigating mines, finding this material called dark stone, which is a very valuable resource and has magical properties to it, and fighting zombies and monsters and other horrific things. But the thing about it that's intriguing to me is it's got these pathways to it. So there's gateways to other worlds, and of course they have plenty of expansions that you can buy to plug these into the game. I have all three of the core sets, which is City of the Ancients, Swamps of Death, and Forbidden Fortress. And then I have probably a dozen expansions, and then probably about another dozen separate characters. And I kind of stopped there. This is sort of like I had this fascination with Star Wars X-Wing, the X-Wing minis game. And there they go again. You can hear that pretty clearly, can't you?
They're great, good guard dogs. You got good guard dogs.
The problem is my house is mostly tiled, so them barking, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me sometimes. Yelling never works. Guys, shut up! Anyway, of course, it doesn't help that I get on my Alexa sometimes. And I tell her, Alexa, bark like a dog.
And then they all freak out.
Yeah, they do. Shadows of Brimstone is, I guess we'll just have to work over it. It's not that loud, is it?
No, it's all right.
Okay, well, they can hear it, but that's all right. I'm sure
it sounds just like Enrique. People will think Enrique's on it.
I shouldn't laugh at that. I did earlier when you said that, and then you said he had Tourette's. I was like, oops. I shouldn't have laughed.
I didn't have Tourette's. I was just saying that.
Okay. Well, good. I'll have to leave that in then to explain it.
He's got palsy, I think, but I don't know.
Oh, I do too. I have Bell's palsy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's rough now. That's one of those things that people don't realize that there's not enough awareness of it.
Right, there isn't. There's a Facebook group with it on there, and I'm really surprised at how many people post to it. But usually it comes and it goes within like 98% of the cases. But I've had it for 16 years now.
Man,
I've gotten mobility back in the right side of my face, but not fully. So I still count it, anyway, so yeah, it's a Shadows of Brimstone. It's a favorite of mine just because it's got that many paths kind of storytelling to it. And I envisioned actually using this in some kind of, I had this grand vision of doing some kind of grand after action report, AAR playthrough writing story kind of a thing where I had these characters that were maybe the Old West characters in this game, or maybe they were in the game Nemesis, which is another great alien type game that crash landed on a planet and were transported to this world and went through all these adventures and then maybe went to other board games too. It was just this crazy idea that I had that I never made. And I ended up getting involved in Solosaurus and then my other podcast. So I never really took it. But so I've got the top shelf of my closet full of Shadows of Brimstone stuff.
Well, that might work. Like they end up in other board games, so they just end up in Gates of Loyang, just harvesting onions. You do an episode of that. That's kind of like your filler episode. Then you can move on to something. Yeah, that'd work.
Right. Well, maybe. And that's kind of another cool thing too. Is I've got a lot of Zombicide stuff. I haven't put Zombicide on my list, but I do enjoy that game. But I also have a bunch of minis that I bought off of Etsy from a guy in Spain who prints them. Like there's figures for RoboCop, for Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, all these 80s type of characters. And I thought that would be good to put into the story too, and even create stats for them maybe. Anyway, I digress. That is my number 8, Shadows of Brimstone. What's your number 8?
All right. Keeping with my my persona of snobbishness, one of these games that just come out in 2017. This is a purely solo game by the designer John Keane. It's called Black Sonata. Now, this is a hidden movement game. It sounds very odd that you could play a solo hidden movement game, but in this game, essentially, in this Shakespearean era, you're trying to figure out who the mysterious Shakespearean lady is. So, and this is super odd if you don't know the backstory, but basically, I think the game takes place in the 1600s, and you're utilizing this special deck of cards that determine the hidden movement for you. And you're basically trying to deduce who the Dark Lady is. Who is this basically Shakespeare's muse, his muse when he wrote Uncut Gems, and who seduced him. And so basically you're trying to go around the city and figure out the various clues of who this woman might be. Is she unmarried? Is she what her occupation is? And then you're looking at the other cards, and at the end of the game, you have to take a guess of who Shakespeare's lover was. This game sounds really odd, and it is, but it's like everything about this game is odd. Like the story, what you're doing, the artwork in it's kind of neat. But Black Sonata should not work. It should not. There should not be a hidden movement game that you can play by yourself. This is hide and go seek by yourself, and it works.
It does. I've actually had that game and I've played it. I sold it last year though to just make some room. I mean, these are very small footprint games. Don't get me wrong, but I've had a lot of those on my shelf. But it's very weird. It took me some time to wrap my head around how that worked, how the hidden movement mechanism worked, playing it solo. So yeah. I feel you. I totally understand.
But I absolutely love Black Sonata.
I had the expansion too. What's the name of it? I can't remember.
The Young Fair, the Fair something.
Yeah,
the Fair Lady, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I never got to play that though. But it's just I think I was playing it and I thought this is a brain burner. It's interesting, but it took a few steps for me to really kind of wrap my brain around it, and it didn't work for too well, to the point where I was like, well, I'm good if I don't have this anymore, kind of a thing. But I appreciated it for what it tried to do. That was certainly something unique. Let's see, my number 7 is we had to do it. We had to broach this, and if my dog would stop barking, that'd be great too. But he's just kind of adding his 2 cents, I guess. My my choice is Fire in the Lake, a 2014 game by GMT, designed by Mark Herman and Volko Runke. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's a coin game, coin standing for counterinsurgency. And by your I assume you're familiar with that.
Yes, I've played Cuba Libre.
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
And I think that's probably the most accessible. I've not gotten to play Fire in the Lake. My father was in Vietnam, and I've always I like that era. There's not that many games that kind of address the whole counterinsurgency in that
right
in that time frame. But yes, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I it's kind of funny. I enjoyed it because I don't know how old you are, but me growing up in the 80s as a teenager, we were just as a country coming to grips with Vietnam and accepting it. And there are all these books that came out and talking about soldiers' experiences, and then movies like Platoon came out, and this whole kind of embracing of the idea. So I was open to this just because it was of that era, but it was also fascinating to me because you could play 4 sides. And with any coin game, it's always best to play it multi-handed first before you use the bots, because the bots can be very confusing. And then, as you said, there's accessible and then there's not so accessible. Cuba Libre, I've not tried that, but I do know that another one, Colonial Twilight, is very accessible because there's only 2 factions in it, I believe. But then you can go all the way up to like Pendragon, which is incredibly complex. But so
yes.
This is kind of like right in the middle, I think, as far as complexity is concerned. It takes effort, it takes learning, and it takes some time. But once you do that, it's this fantastic, fun system. And I've actually bought the bot pack for it, and then there's another expansion as well that I have. I've not touched those yet, and it's actually been a while since I played Fire in the Lake. It's funny. So there's a handful of games that I've had over the years that I would get rid of before I moved in 2018. And I've regretted not having them. So I got them back again. And this was one of them. I, got rid of it. It's a heavy, big box game, not like big box like Gloomhaven, but normal war game size kind of a game. And it was great to have it back in my collection again and take it for a spin. So any coin game, and I see this question sometimes on the solitaire war games groups on Facebook or elsewhere, people ask what's the best coin game to get into. I would always say I've heard Cuba Libre is easy to get into, or Colonial Twilight. If you get into those and you can wrap your head around it and you like them, then you can try something more complicated. Unless, yeah, it always though really boils down to what's interesting to you. Do you find the Vietnam conflict more interesting than, say, the conflict in North Africa in the 50s? It's totally up to you as a gamer. But anyway, that was my number 7, Fire in the Lake.
I have Labyrinth, which I believe is also a coin game.
Yes.
I have not played it. It's a new arrival. Not to stoke your consumerism, but I will. Have you played, because of that era of Vietnam, there was one game that I purchased, not realizing when I purchased it that it was one of the more difficult solo games to learn, Fields of Fire.
Yep. So I've had this. I don't have it now. I sold it a few months ago. Just because, well, did I? That's the sad thing, when you have such a big collection and you're like, do I have this? Oh, wait, I have this game. I can buy this expansion, get the expansion. Oh, wait, I don't have the game. Anyway, no, that one, I have had it. I never played it. I always wanted to, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it because I've heard so many people say it's a great game, but it takes an enormous amount of effort to learn it. But once you do, it's fantastic.
It's very challenging, but yes, it is a like platoon size or level of management. Like you're sending this fire team over here and this squadron over here, and right. you want to communicate with them, so you have to send the runner over here, and maybe he gets shot. It's very interesting. But yeah, like I said, that was one of the few games I bought. Actually, it was one of the first solo games I think I bought right after my dad passed away. And like I said, he was a Vietnam veteran. And that was just that era of board games for some reason I was fascinated with at the time. But yeah, anyways, and I don't do honorable mentions, but it didn't make the list because it was so complicated. But I still own it. I still need to get it. My number 7. Let me see here. My number 7. Getting away from so far, let me see. I've done my World War II thing. I've done my Shakespeare. I've done my vegetables. Now we're doing detective work.
Okay.
I feel like, and I was a big fan of the Sherlock Holmes books, and there's several Sherlock Holmes games out there which I've played and enjoyed, but there has been no game that has really captured the essence of how dull police work is than the 2018 Portal release by Ignacy Cevicek, Detective: A Modern Crime board game. This game, they literally just must have followed some detectives around or watched the first 48-hour show and realized that 90% of what detectives do are just talk on the phone, because that's all that this game is. It's a very small board with numerous amounts of tarot-sized cards, and you have a mystery. This thing got stolen or somebody got killed, whatever it might be. And it says, okay, so where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the morgue, or do you want to go to the computer place and talk to the CSI guys? Or do you want to go here and talk to this person? And every move you make, the timer goes down. And the timer is not like, oh, the killer is going to get away. It's your shift's over. That's the timer. So it's like a little coffee mug looking thing that's like, okay, I guess I need to drive 3 hours to the forensic place. And then when you get there, you get this card, you read the narrative, and it's like, do you want to ask about this? This will cost you an hour, and you might. And then you flip the card over, and it's like, you wasted your time. Do you want to press it and see if there's more? And it's just that. It's just reading. And plus, there is a website that you go to that looks like a CSI website where you're typing in some of the information that you find, and it's very thematic. It brings it up. It gives you more material to read. This game should not be this engrossing, but I can make a cup of coffee, sit down at my computer, this little small footprint game, open it up, and I'm just enraptured for hours trying to figure out who flashed the poor lady at the Aldi's parking lot. And that's literally what you're just running around. And the if you're a detective, if you're utilizing, it's a co-op too. You can do it co-op, but you don't, obviously don't have to. But if you're spending too much time working, you just get stressed. So it's like you've spent 3 hours over your shift, and this stress affects other things, other outcomes in the game. Like it messes up your investigation. So it's like I imagine like I'm pushing my detective too hard, so he just goes home and drinks or something, And I imagine this being some full, scraggly 5 o'clock shadow detective that's worked 3 hours later than he should have. And he comes home, and on the voice machine is his ex-wife calling him for alimony, and he's just sitting there drinking a Miller, it's like, anyways, so this game makes you just literally, it dulls you into submission. I love this game.
It's called what again? Detective what?
Detective. Like the most boring, absolute boring title ever. Detective. It's by Portal Games. It came out, I think, 2017, 2018. There's already been several expansion. There's like one in LA that's like yellow, and I think it comes with a black shades or something in it, so you can pretend like you're that redheaded guy off NCIS Miami.
Yeah, and scream as the music theme plays. That's Detective, a modern crime board game?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I've seen this before, and I've almost pulled the trigger on it a few times, but I haven't quite done it.
It's so dull, but I love dull. I love dull mysteries.
There's something to be said about that, though, and it appeals to me just because back in the day, I was a criminal justice major. I wanted to be a cop, of course, back when police were, a little different world back then. I never pursued that path, but the degree I still have an affinity for these types of games, so I might do that now that you've recommended it.
Well, go ahead and live your fantasy.
Right. Well, yeah, okay. That sounds pathetic when you put it that way, but I don't mean it that way.
But I'm just joking.
I know.
I could have been an actor.
It sounds pathetic again. I could have been an actor too. I just have to play board games now for people. But yeah, what a life, I'm happy. I'm fine. Anyway, you opened a can of worms with that, actually, because I thought first you were going to say Police Precinct, which I have the second edition of that. That's a fun little beer and pretzels board game if you like police work.
I have that as well.
There you go. Perfect.
Edition. Yes.
It's a good game. And then there's another one that I thought of called Gumshoe that came out in 1985.
Oh, yeah.
You know that game?
Yes, do.
I only know of it because I almost got a copy of it from Noble Knight. I actually ordered it. And after I did a trade-in, I got some credit, so I wanted that. And then they wrote me a few days later and said, "Oh, we're sorry, we can't find this anywhere in our warehouse." I was disappointed because this is just a huge game with classified ads and maps and narrative paragraphs. And have you played it, or you just heard of it?
I've seen it. It's basically very similar to the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective. If you've played it?
Yes, I've heard of that. Yes,
so, it's very, very similar to that.
I guess I'm glad in a way I didn't actually manage to get a hold of it, because that would have been a gigantic time sink. But detective sounds like more up my alley, so I'm going to have to check that out when the time comes.
Designer, if I'm not mistaken. Sherlock Consulting Detective and Gumshoe's the same designer.
Okay.
But Ignacy Cevicek did Detective. He's the guy from Portal Games, the Polish company.
So my number 6 is a game that I've actually enjoyed for many years. It came out in 2016, this version of it anyway, called Nemo's War, 2nd edition. Originally published by Victory Point Games and designed by Chris Taylor. It's a great game if you like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Jules Verne. It takes some getting used to, because it's not like you're following the book. You've got this super submarine in the, I think it's 1870, roughly, Age of Sail kind of thing. So this might be up your alley if you've never played it.
Oh yeah, I love.
It's fantastic. Not just from the fact that you get to do what you do, and that's sail the high seas and interact with the world as such, but you also get to choose your character's motivation. So you can be a warmonger and just be out to sink ships and cause mayhem, or you can Here we go again. Or you can be a man of science and, just try to investigate the world, that kind of a thing. There's other motivations too, but that's something that I loved about it. It was like different games in the box. It just made you approach the game differently and do things differently. And it also ramps up in difficulty as you go, just to be more of a challenge. So that's it. Nemo's War 2nd Edition, my number 6.
Another good dice rolling game, basically, that tells a narrative. It really
Yes.
does. It boils down to a lot of you just ramming ships.
Yeah, well, you can't do that if you get that improvement.
Well, everything that I did in that game was basically just ram ships, and then that just sinking everything. Because I love the movie 20,000 Leagues, and the old one in the 50s with Kirk Douglas. That's a great show. Lots of ship ramming in that show too. I'm big about ramming ships. That's a thrilling thing.
That's kind of cool. I got to play it again. It's been a while, but I remember there's actually upgrades to your ship that you could do that would allow you to do that more easily. There's like this serrated edge of a knife on the front of the Nautilus, the submarine, that it's obvious what it's used for. It's kind of cool.
That's what the sea used to be back in the Roman days. They would just ram each other's ships and jump on. I mean, it's just taking you back to how things should be. Nowadays, if you ram somebody else's boat, you get in trouble. The cops come out there and be like, they confiscate your 12-pack and all your undersized smallmouth bass, and they take you to jail.
You sounds like you've experienced this personally.
Well, we have a lot of lakes in this area. And although I love the ocean, I've never been on the ocean, but I fancy myself a sailor. I think I could sail.
You should try a cruise then.
I'm not doing it. I don't think I could do a cruise. I don't. It's not so much being on the ship; it's the people. Just the people on there. I mean, it's.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could
see that.
Yeah. Okay.
Or the colds, or all that stuff. Anyway.
My number 6 is an oldie and a goodie as well, keeping in the vein of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Mine, which is also published by Portal Games, is Robinson Crusoe. Same designer as Detective, Ignacy Cevicek. Robinson Crusoe, which was actually known for being quite difficult to learn when its Z-Man edition was out, it's been reprinted here, so it should be relatively available. I make sure here before
I think so. I used to have that game.
Yes, 2012. I love this game, and I'm not a co-op person, so I like games that are punishing, and you will not win this game. Like, you're just basically going to play the scenarios over and over and over and over and suffer. And it was comical about how difficult this game is. But basically all that you're doing, having this big map-sized board where you're flipping over hexagons and trying to survive the animals and collect food and hunt and survive and complete some objective through whatever scenario. And there's some scenarios that you can buy with various expansions that will they stretch on. You can play the whole thing. I love this game because it does tell a story. I remember the first time I beat this game, I've only beat this game like twice, once solo and then once with a group. And I can remember the story that it told. And I love games that when you're playing through it, you're making difficult decisions and you're arguing and trying to figure out what you should do next. This is one of them. So Robinson Crusoe, The Adventures on the Cursed Island is the actual full-time name.
I've seen so many memes about that game. I think I've made one or two myself.
Strangely enough, they redid it and did First Martians, which is awful. I hate First Martians. That was one of my most anticipated games, and I absolutely hated that game.
I wanted to like that too. I actually owned that for a while, and then I just got rid of it because I thought, there's no way I'm going to play this. There's just no way.
Super dull.
Yeah, well, yeah. Terraforming Mars is much more interesting.
Terraforming Mars. I'm anti-terraforming Mars. I've spread my anti-terraforming Mars propaganda far and wide.
Well, I don't own it anymore, if that's any consolation.
Yeah, all right,
although
good.
I should say my first experience with your podcast was I was looking for information on Tapestry. And
Ah.
I think you said you hated the game, if I remember right.
I nicknamed it Crapistry.
Yeah, well, I never played it. I actually ended up selling it. It's sat on my shelf for like a year and a half, and I just I listened to you, and I still bought the thing.
Well, here's all you have to do if you want to play Tapestry. You can do it at home. Just get some cubes, line them up in a straight line, and just occasionally move one upward. That's all the game is. Is like you just move cubes up. And it's yeah. Don't get me started on that game. That's a good top 10 list of what games I hate.
That would be another topic. Maybe we should do that
go.
in
Come
6
back
months
with
or
a
so.
game.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Pencil me in.
Awesome. Awesome. I got to think about that now. There's several games out there that I'm like,
no, I've got a list right now.
Other people love.
Yes, I've dearly loved games that I absolutely hate.
Oh, good. All right. Good fodder. I'm going to have to think about that and get back to you. So awesome. My, my number 5 is, I think it's more of a co-op game, but I've loved playing it solo, and it's Black Orchestra, coming from 2016 Game Salutes.
You do like those Nazis, Nazi games, don't you?
Know.
As do I. I like that Black Sonata. I liked it a lot.
That's a Shakespeare, though. That was centuries before decades. That was centuries before that. It was a few decades. Here's a couple of decades, I guess. Anyway, Black Orchestra is just cool to me because it ramps up in difficulty as the Germans expand. Your job becomes much more difficult, and it's always seems to tell this great narrative story, and there's twists and turns in it that you don't see. Like, for example, you've got this big plan. You've got the weapons, you've got the location, you got everything mapped out, and then suddenly something happens to just mess it all up, and you're going back to square one again. So when you do actually line everything up and timing actually works with you, it's a great feeling, because this is another game where you will not win it, but maybe 1% of the time. Well, either that or I stink at it.
You can get captured. It's a co-op game where you're trying to kill Hitler.
Right.
And I remember that Enrique got captured and was being tortured, I guess, whatever the I can't remember what the mechanism of that is, but I found that to be quite interesting, that a member of your team can. I mean, it's very well done. The game is awesome.
Yep.
It's certainly one of my favorite co-ops, and I hate co-ops. And I believe that my character attempted and failed at setting off a bomb, and then Gabi's character was the only one that fled. Like, he somehow got away. So it's like Enrique like had all of his fingernails pulled off, and I ended up getting shot, and Gabi left. But it was it's a fascinating. Again, it's another one of those games that tells a story, a very dark story, but yet and that is an awesome. That's a game that gets overlooked a whole awful lot. But if you're into co-ops and narrative games, Black Orchestra is amazing.
For sure.
All right. That was number 5, wasn't it? I'm off course.
That was my number 5. Yep. You're on.
All right. So we're moving on. All right. So these are the really good games now.
Hopefully.
All right. So this is the game that killed Coffee Roasters for me. Now, Coffee Roasters is a game where you throw stuff in a bag and you pull it out, and then you act surprised. So it's literally, you can play Coffee Roasters
pretty much
anywhere. Just throw stuff in a bag and reach your hand in there, and then when you pull this out, be like, what am I going to do with this? That was coffee. Well, somebody took that mechanic of Coffee Roasters and took the very dull and boring, monotonous thing that we all do in the morning, is making coffee, unless you go to Starbucks or somewhere. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I like to make my own. I French press. Some people bench press in the morning. I French press. I like the French press. They took that mechanism and made a game and said, what could we make this, give this mechanism an interesting theme? Let's put it in space. And they did. And I was upset that they did this, because why? This is not going to work. This is stupid. and they gave it a terrible name called Warp's Edge.
Okay.
And I did not want to like this game. I took this game camping with me. So like my board games don't leave the house. I don't take stuff because it's like, I don't want the moisture to touch them. Like I have a dehumidifier in this corner and a humidifier in this corner, so I can keep my hygrometer just perfect for the humidity of my games. If I take a game outside, I have no respect for it. Well, I took Warp's Edge outside and played it while I was camping and fell in love with it. And it shouldn't be this good, but all you're doing is pulling various power tokens out of this bag, utilizing them on your ships, and then dying, and then going back in time and redoing that again until you've defeated some sort of enemy that you're fighting. It shouldn't be this good, but it works. And Warp's Edge is my favorite. They call it bag building, I guess, or bag pulling, or
I think you're right.
It's stick your hand in this bag and see what's inside. It's like that's all that it is. It's what it is. What you got there? That's the game. It's very creepy because you simply watch somebody playing Warp's Edge as them digging in a bag, looking at this stuff and being like, oh my, So if you're into that type of thing, Warp's Edge. And I think I'll look that up real fast. Who did that? But Warp's Edge.
I'll say a few extra prayers for you tonight. That's all I'm going to say about that.
There you go. 2020. It's 2020. Scott Alms. That's who it is. Scott Alms and Renegade. Scott Alms. Not the alms for the poor. He's the guy that did all the Tiny Epic games. Oh, okay. He makes the games for little people.
I should know that. I've got a few Tiny Epic games, but I haven't played them all that often. We've actually covered Warp's Edge on the podcast. Martin and I did an episode on it a couple of years ago.
Who's Martin?
Martin Gonzalez.
Oh, that guy that left you. He left you.
I wouldn't say he left me.
You fired him.
He has other priorities. No. Yeah.
So nothing. So he just got wrote off the show. Basically, he left the show on his own accord.
No, he was actually still paying the bills for keeping this podcast hosted, and I was appreciative of that. So I mentioned him in every episode that I did when I restarted it.
So he's the power behind the throne.
Not anymore. I took it over. I took over the payments.
I'm about to say.
Well, I have a sponsorship, which I haven't mentioned yet in this episode.
Who's your sponsor?
Game Castle with a K. Game Castle.
Let me look this up.
Go for it. You can actually get a 10% discount if you use the code Solosaurus10 at checkout. I was happy to get them on board. I used to have Stone Valley Games, we used to have Stone Valley Games as our sponsor, but we just kind of went by the wayside, like I said, due to personal things and just family issues and what have you. I've talked about this in other episodes, so I'm sure people don't want to hear me talk about it again. But I was very happy to get these guys because there's 10 stores nationwide, and they're very friendly. I've had nothing but a good time talking to them. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know they existed until a friend of mine told me about them, and I started doing the research. I'm like, whoa, but then again, I don't know every game store out there, every chain out there. So anyway,
you see, the Board Game Snobs, despite all of our popularity, we are not, we're not sponsored by anybody.
Right.
And it's not, we have a Patreon, which, so we take money from our listeners, of course, but we use that money to buy things that we desperately need.
Yeah.
So but we like to, not that we would refuse to be sponsored, but we find that being unsponsored allows us to say things provocative.
Right.
Whereas
That's true.
You can't say anything bad about Game Castle.
No, I don't have any reason to. I mean,
well, I'm on their website.
Kind of a thing.
I'm looking at their stuff right now. That's nice. I like their website. Their website.
They just redesigned it actually. So
they're in California. They got a store in Austin, Texas.
Yes, they do. They have 5 in California and then 5 more across the country, including that one in Austin. Yeah, I can't remember where the other ones are offhand. You think I should have that memorized? I'm sorry.
Well, they got College Park MD. So see, here's the thing. I don't know. I'm not good with the abbreviations. I can't do abbreviations. Like it's Maryland?
Maryland. MD is Maryland. Yep.
What's Akinney IA? What's
IA? Is Iowa.
Okay. Well, you're 2 for 2. Reno NV. Well, that's Nevada.
There you
I know
go.
that. And Greenville, SC is South Carolina. Kent,
Correct.
WA.
Washington.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's harder than what you think.
It's not bad.
But,
I was a corporate travel agent in the 90s, so I had a lot of airport codes and state codes memorized.
I gotcha. All right.
Back in
So
the day.
gamecastle.com.
Yes,
Castle with a K.
Castle with a K.
Castle with
And
a
actually,
K.
I have Eric Summerer doing the intros for me too, so that's awesome.
How'd you get Eric Summers to do this for you?
So yeah, Solosaurus is on the Dice Tower Network. I think that's something Brandon and Carter, our forefathers, did, and we just maintained it. So he does those intros for free. But if you have other voice work you want him to do, of course, he requires some compensation,
I did not
and rightly
know.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so
that brings up a question, and we're going way off topic here, but whatever. I don't care. Where did you get your voiceover intro person?
That's Ben Maddox.
That's who?
That's Ben Maddox.
Oh, it is
Ben Maddox, the actor Ben Maddox.
No.
Yeah.
Well, how about that? Look at you, fancy people.
well, see, Ben and I go way back. So so it's like Ben. He first. Well, and I say way back. I mean, back when he first started, I watched one of Ben's movies that he was in.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say the name of it because he did a lot of extracurricular movies, that type of thing.
Okay.
No, I'm making all this up. I'm making this up just in case he's listening. Like he probably doesn't. He ain't listening. He don't play solo games. He's got friends. But no, Ben. We just asked Ben Maddox, can you do the intro for us? And he said yes. And then the rest of it has just been voice clips that we've stolen from like Dan Hughes and stuff like that. So, like anybody that we can clip if we can get them to say our name, we clip them. And we've considered joining the Dice Tower network, but it's one of those things. You're getting joined in a network. You got to start showing up to meetings. They start having responsibilities and.
I've not I've not been invited to one meeting or showed up to one. I didn't realize that was a thing, to be honest. I just would mention it at the end of the podcast. We're proud to be part of the Dice Tower, and we are because Dice Tower is such a force in the board game community.
They are.
So yeah. Not that I mean, if I had to say something bad about them, I would, but I won't because I don't. It's not one of those things. Yeah, they're the greatest. They're awesome. And well, they don't.
Tom's really tall. Have you met Tom?
I have not.
He's like 6'9" or something. He's
really?
He's very, very, very tall.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. I did exchange emails with him back in the 2000s-ish because I was interested in doing wargaming reviews for them. And I remember Tom telling me, yeah, that'd be great because we don't have anybody doing wargames reviews. And this was at that time. And now I'm sure they have a whole slew of them. But, that's my exchange with Tom back in the day.
They didn't realize that middle-aged white guys that played war games were so popular, and now they found they started figuring that out. Now here, old Mike Delicio showed up, and now he kind of took them by storm.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Where were we?
Oh,
we're on number 5.
That was number 5. So you're going to number. That was my 5.
All right. Number 4, as I mentioned earlier, my number 4 is Ambush. Not just Ambush, but Purple Heart, Move Out, and Silver Star, which are all 3 of their expansions, plus Battle Hymn, which is the same system, but in the Pacific where you play as Marines. And then there's an expansion for that also called Leatherneck, which I have all of them. So this was another game that I gave up on back in the late 2010s before I moved. I sold it because I was never playing it. Instantly regretted it. Slowly but surely got them all back into my collection. So it's a fantastic game. I won't go into too much detail because you already did a great coverage of it. It's fantastic, paragraph driven. It's my understanding that actually drove the designers nuts, trying to make sure everything lined up properly. But that's some excellent QA they have because I never saw any issues with that as I played this game. But the one thing I would complain about, if there was a complaint, is that it's not a chronological. The missions are all over the place. And that always bothered me because it's like you've got a squad and you created the squad and you named the squad and that's your squad. So they drop on the first mission, I think is called D-Day, Night of Destiny or something like that. And then the next mission is in Sicily, say in 43. It's like, wait, what? That's the next mission. And then it just kind of jumps all over the place where you're gaining skills and abilities and improving your soldiers, and they're, having to replace them because they get invariably lost on missions. But then you're having to scramble to try to make sense out of it. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. You're going to the Battle of the Bulge, then you're going back to D-Day, then you're going to what? This makes no sense. So that always drove me crazy. And there's actually people on Board Game Geek who say you could play it chronologically. It's just a lot tougher to play the first missions first. I've never been that dedicated, to be honest. There's people I'm sure that have spreadsheets and go crazy for it, but me, I'm happy to have it. I'm happy to play it in its order. I've always wanted to write a story along those lines following this, and some people have done that, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around that, and maybe I'm just too ADHD in that regard. I don't know.
Yeah. And Battle Hymn was a good expansion, and not to be confused with Battle Hymns, the board game of warring church choirs.
Tell me that's not a thing.
No. I think it was the Westboro Baptist Church that designed that one. Let me look it up. No, I might be joking. So all right, yeah, the Ambush. Ambush is a great game. I love.
Yep.
Ambush is a great game. Ambush is a great game, and desperately needs a reprinting. My number 4. I don't know how you feel about small games.
I love them if they're good. I mean, it doesn't matter how big it is. Well, okay, that's what guys say.
Okay,
right?
I'm gonna cut that and quote
I'm
that.
I'm gonna have to cut that. Yeah, sorry.
No.
There are a few things I will cut, but that's one of them, I think.
No, keep that in, because I was gonna edit that in so I could use it for my podcast. Well, like I said, I need sound bites. Now,
okay,
now
right.
small games. I'm talking like games that like come in a wallet size package. So
Right.
this is actually a 1 to 4 player game, but I prefer it 1 player. And this game, I don't know why it hasn't gotten more attention, because not from just a price point, because it's super cheap, but from the fact of how well designed it is. It's called Sprawlopolis.
Okay.
Now, Sprawlopolis, which is hard to pronounce, especially when you're drinking a Guinness, is made by Button Shy Games, and they make the little small wallet games. And this game just has 18 cards. And in this game, what you do is flip out 3 of the cards. The cards are double-sided. On the back are all the various types of scoring mechanisms and objectives. So you deal out 3 different cards that now randomly say, all right, this is your objective. And then all the other cards are just different types of blocks of cities, such as green forest areas like parks, and then blue residential areas, and various other types of color coordinated areas with roads. And all you're doing is laying cards down on top of each other to try to create a city and meet your objectives. This should not be that much fun, but it is absolutely mesmerizing once you quickly learn how to play. It doesn't take but a minute to figure it out. The co-op version is basically just you and another player both have a hand of cards that you're trying to lay out and meet the objectives. But the solo is where the puzzle comes from. It is very engaging and very satisfying when you're able to lay your cards out in such a way that you're meeting all of your objectives and creating this really neat looking city block. Sprawlopolis is one of the best games that have come out of Button Shy, in my opinions. And it was 2018 release, and so it's still readily available and particularly cheap. So that's Sprawlopolis. It's a wonderful, small solo game.
I do like small footprint games if it's an interesting subject. And I mean, sometimes, I think it can be a snobby thing to look at a game and go, oh, well, it doesn't have minis. I don't want to play that. It doesn't have 150 minis to it. So, I don't want to. It doesn't have upgraded components, but that looks interesting. I've heard of it before. I've never had it. I might have to try that one. So
Sprawlopolis is really good. Really good.
This conversation's bad for my wallet so far.
I know.
My number 3 is a DVG game called Pavlov's House, done by David Thompson. Yeah,
I've been to Pavlov's House.
You played it?
I've been there. I've partied at Pavlov's house and played Pavlov's house. Yes, it's
nice.
Yes.
Very good. So yeah, David Thompson, the designer, super nice guy. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I've talked to him, had conversations. I should have him on the podcast actually, but he's a prolific designer. In this series that he does called Valiant Defense, this is but one of them. And I've heard people ask questions about which is the best one to choose from. I would always say Pavlov's House first, just because it's so easy to wrap your head around it. And all the games in this series are similar, but they're done just differently enough to be incredibly appealing. So you're not playing the exact same game, just with a different wrapper, different rules, different objectives, different everything. It's really cool. But this particular one is great. The card play is tense. What the German bot player does, it's always a Stuka attack at the wrong moment. And you're trying to not only defend the house, but you're also trying to bring reinforcements across. You're trying to bring supplies, ammunition, food, water. You're trying to keep your anti-aircraft guns undamaged. You're trying to keep your artillery positions open on the other side of the river. So you're not just focusing on this one aspect. You're actually dealing with this whole thing that across the entire Stalingrad 62nd Army area, which 62nd Army was the Soviet army that was defending at the time in this area. So Pavlov's House, it's a fantastic solo game. If you're interested in getting into solo war games, that would actually be one of my first recommendations, just to, easy to get into, fun to play, tense, and you don't always win, which is important, I think.
And not to be confused with Pavlov's Dogs. That's a board game about dog training.
I think that's the one where you put a treat in its mouth and it snaps its head shut if you press the wrong tooth. Or
David Thompson. Now I'm gonna rant about David Thompson. Because number one, David Thompson had released a game last year called Resist, sitting on my shelves. I haven't got to play it yet. It's a solo game. He also designed all the Undaunted Normandy games as well.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken. He also designed one of my favorite 2 to 4 player games, War Chess. I say chess instead of chest, but War Chest. It comes in a chest, which is the precursor to, it's like the medieval version of Undaunted. I prefer it. It's a great game. He also did By Stealth and by Sea, which is another solo game about ramming boats, blowing up boats. I've always wanted to play that game because I'm all about blowing up boats. But that's a DBG game, yes. And so he did the Sniper Elite board game, which is way better than what it should be.
That was another one I bought and should not have bought, and ended up selling it because my eyes were too big at the time.
It's not. I don't find it good as a solo game, but it's
really
it's very,
okay.
Yeah, it's very, very good as a very good as a 2-player game.
Well, that's good. That's good.
All right, so we're in the number 3s now, right? We're in the top 3.
Yep, that was my number 3.
Okay, so all these games here, so Pavlov's House, all these games from here are awesome. Like the top 5 are good. These 3 are awesome.
So kind of going on a graded color scale where it's kind of lukewarm at the bottom, but we're getting
all of my games are amazing. So
okay.
I'm just saying is that we're getting so close. We're about to touch the sun. And so it's going to get a little crazy here.
Okay,
so,
perfect.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with, I believe the 2011, and I'm just bringing this up. Do you know Noah Wiley? You know a lot of actors.
Well, I don't know him personally, but I know who he is. Yes.
Okay, so you know Noah Wiley of ER fame.
Right, yep. And The Librarian, too, I think, or something like that.
Well, we're not going to talk about The Librarian. That was weird.
Okay. I've never seen it, so.
I watched a few. It's basically, he was doing his best Nicolas Cage impression. Like trying to be, American. What was the Nicolas Cage show that he was undiscovered? What was the one where he was Indiana Jones?
Which one?
Nicolas Cage was Indiana Jones.
God.
What'd you call it? See, I can't even remember what it was. He's going around finding the Constitution. He found the Constitution in like the bathroom of some place, and it led him to treasure, like Mennonite or Mason. Mennonites, Mennonite treasure, the
National
Masons,
treasure.
Freemasons. There you go, the Freemasons. Anyways, so Noah Wiley starred in a 2011 sci-fi series called Falling Skies.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, it wasn't any good. It wasn't any good. All right. I don't want people to get confused because the board game I'm recommending is not based on the very weird TNT series Falling Skies. The board game has nothing to do with it other than the fact that there's aliens following from the skies. Because this game is actually called Under the Falling Skies. People get that wrong. They think that it's just you got Under Falling Skies. So I guess for copyright versions, they had to do that under because everyone just calls it Falling Skies. But Falling Skies, the 2020 release, is a Chex Game edition, which Chex Games are the people who've made boatloads of money selling that Codenames game. This game is basically like Space Invaders. Here comes this longboard with all these aliens floating down, and you're shooting them out of the sky using dice to manipulate the various ground forces that you have and research technology. Kind of like you think of like, what was the show with Will Smith? I know I'm making a lot of movie references. What was that Will Smith show? Yeah, with Jeff Goldblum.
Yep.
And Jeff Goldblum's like, yeah, we got to take this virus up to the spaceship.
We got to use my MacBook to upload a virus to this totally compatible computer system by the alien. Yeah, sorry.
He took his Lenovo up there to space,
right?
and brought down a civilization. And here's what nobody pointed out is that basically they just updated Windows is all that they did. Those aliens did have nothing updated, and he just logged in as like, do you want to update now? Sure. And that's what they clicked. And the aliens died that brought them down. And they all, and you see them, like the few that were still a survivor, like they were just running off Linux or something. They had it.
Right.
But
still better than the
needless
sequel.
to say, Falling Skies is an amazing game because it's very puzzly. Dice, you're trying to figure out how to maintain your base. The aliens just keep bombing you. And then the mothership, there's this neat little thing where you have the little mothership on the top and it slowly is moving down. And then once it gets to a certain spot, it's just, you're dead. Because it does the thing where it blows up the White House. And so basically you have to get your technology together, whether that be the Windows update or that one weird guy that was on National Lampoon Vacation. He flies up into the
Uncle Eddie.
He flies up the jet plane in Independence Day, doesn't he? He shoots up through
hello,
the colon
boys.
of the hello boys, and flies up through the colon of the spaceship and the mothership and blows them up. So that's Under Falling Skies to me. For it being such a small box puzzling game with just dice manipulation, it's too engrossing, and there's a little bit of a campaign with it. I absolutely love this game, and I would have never have thought that this would have been a game. It caught me by surprise. I had zero expectations for it, and I think that's why I liked it so much.
I own this game too, and I've played it once, and it's been a while, but I didn't add it to my list just because it's a good game, but I didn't, I haven't played it enough to really say this is one of the best games I've ever played. But it's got some really cool features to it. Like you said, the mothership, the aliens moving down, almost Space Invaders type style. And then the base building component of it too, where you're trying to manage resources. And it's just this jumble of juggling that is actually, as you said, it should not be this good, but it actually really is. And I had to double check. I've got it on my shelf here next to me. And you said Under Falling Skies. Does it really called Under Falling Skies? I had to look at it. But yeah, Under Falling Skies. Good choice. Let's see. I didn't lose you, did I? You're still there?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I was looking at pictures of Noah Wiley, and that's what I was looking up, and it started. I'm starting getting pictures of Noah Wiley,
okay,
and
that's all right.
I just don't. He's a handsome man.
Hey, well, yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable enough to say the same thing. Yeah,
I
don't know what he looks like now, but back in the 2000s, sure.
How old is Noah Wiley? Noah Wiley now. I'm looking at
52.
52.
52.
Man.
Yep.
All right.
Time progresses. It waits for nobody, unfortunately. Oh, let's see. So I've got a space-themed one also for my number two. And that's Space Corp 2025 to 2300 AD.
Oh, I have.
Can you-
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yes. No. I've been wanting to play this for such a long time because
So
this looks like Wayland Yutani the game.
it kind of is. So I loved it so much. I actually did a full 20 article spread of a playthrough for the Armchair Dragoon site. You could find it there if you wanted to look it up. Anybody interested? But it's such a, so I never played it multi-handed. I've only played it solo. And it's really cool because there's 3 eras of exploration. So you start on Earth with your teams, and your job is to try to push out to the asteroid belt. And once you get there, you ticked a few boxes, you flip the map over, and you're suddenly in the inner solar system. And your objective is to spread out past Pluto to the Oort cloud, I think it is. And then once you do that and make some objectives, then you can go to another board, which is interstellar space, where you can colonize and move among the stars. And throughout this whole thing, you're exploring, you're finding resources, you're finding ancient alien civilizations, and even aliens too sometimes. They're not always friendly. It's fun, but it's also one of those solo games where, so this is interesting. It came up in a conversation in the solo gaming community a few years ago. Somebody asked, what's the one mechanism that you don't like in a game? And I realized I don't like when I play an AI or a bot that runs by different rules than I have to run by. It annoys me, just because it's like we should be. It's hard. I know. I totally understand. It's hard to program something that plays by the same rules you do. This game is totally like that. The bot will just do whatever. So you might be playing that first stage where you're trying to push yourself to get to the Lagrange points, get to Mars, get to the asteroid belt. You draw a card and for the bot, and it can say Mars. So, right off the bat, the bot can just be on Mars. It's one of these things, though, that I don't really mind in this case, because it pushes me to not be so Churchillian in my spread throughout the galaxy. I'm starting to push my innovations. I'm trying to research better propulsion systems, better exploration, better different categories that you can improve in. And I love that aspect of it. It's tense, but it's also makes sense in a way. You're not just playing by yourself, because I think you start with 2 teams, and technically it's up to 4 players, and each player has 2 teams to start with. But when you're playing it solo, you have your 2 teams, and you're playing against 6 of the other guys. So he's got plenty of resources, plenty of choices, and winning against him is no small feat. So I actually think I did win that game against him. And that was so much fun, though. I love the game. There's an expansion to it called Ventures, which the base game corporations are all the same, but this one actually has corporations that have different abilities and different things going on. I haven't played it yet, but I will eventually. So that's it. Number 2 is Space Corp.
Well, you've sold me, because I've been wanting to play that game for quite some time, and yeah, that's been on my list for a long, long time.
Very good.
Okay, so we're on number 2. Now, my number 2, this is another odd one. I'll just warn you.
Okay.
Because this is done by a very famous designer, a man who gets a lot of praise, Mr. Alexander Pfister.
Mm-hmm.
Now he is the great minds behind. Everybody loves Great Western Trail. Everybody thinks I hate Great Western Trail.
I've never played it, but
it's
I know what you're
don't
talking
waste
about.
your time. Port Royal is a decent game. All My Goods is a decent game. He did Isle of Skye is a decent game. He also did Maracaibo, awful game. I can't stand it. Monster Expedition, I haven't played Boone Lake, haven't played Cloud Age, but I have played his best game, which nobody talks about. A little game called Blackout Hong Kong. Now, this game, unfortunately, I believe it may have been released initially by as Eggert Spiel was one of the companies that released it. I think it may have also been Stronghold Games may have released it too. I might be talking out of turn. But either way, there were some issues when it was first produced because of the color of it, the color palette. It was blacked out, strangely enough, because that's the name of the game. But the idea of the game is that Hong Kong as a city has underwent a complete blackout, and you are operating as the emergency management people, trying to supply the various healthcare, food, water, and getting things turned back on. Now, this game, of course, it clicked in my head because I have a background in emergency management. I like this type of thing. I like the type of the card play that you have is very indicative of like Mombasa or Sky Mines, another game of his, where you're playing your characters, your people from your hand out for them to go do certain actions. There's a rondelle, which is the randomness of the game, is like how hard it is to get certain resources. So you're rolling dice, and it's like, okay, this round you have this many resources of this type, but unfortunately you don't have any of this. And then there's a small map where you're trying to connect various areas and trying to restore power and so forth and score these areas. It's a great multiplayer game. But even as a one-player game, the puzzle that you're trying to piece together and how well you are at managing this disaster, this game should not work as well as it does. I don't know why nobody talks about this game. I don't know why it's not more popular. This is just, in terms of just top 10 games, this is Alexander Pfister's best game to me. It's up there, probably close to Mombasa, which is very similar in this realm. Everybody talks about Great Western Trail. I do not know why. But Hong Kong Blackout is to me his magnum opus and a wonderful solo game for what it does. And I've yet to come across something that does all that it does correctly. And so a game that you will overlook. You'll overlook this game. But that's why it's my number 2. And I love it. Absolutely love Blackout Hong Kong.
Well, that's a real shame because I've actually looked at that game before and I've almost bought it a few times.
Oh, it's readily available. Like you can get
yeah. I'm looking
$15, $15 right now. You can get it on Geek Market. Yeah, like it's everywhere.
And $61 on Amazon.
Oh yeah, Amazon's always after
you. Crazy. Anyway, yeah, that sounds interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I might have to. That's like 3 games now. I probably got to add to my list.
I'm interested. I think my number 1 is gonna. All right, go ahead. You're number 1.
Okay, number 1. So I had to think about this a lot, but then it came to me in an epiphany, and it was almost like shooting a gun over my head and having the plaster fall on my head. And if you know what scene I'm referring to, and of course my dogs bark right at the moment. That's okay. There's a very famous scene from a movie called Big Trouble in Little China. And there's a board game by Everything Epic Games by this very title, but it's called The Game at the end. So just, that's not quite the movie. Came out in 2018, designed by Christopher Batarlis and Boris Polanski and Jim Sammartino. I freaking love this game. I love it to death. And yeah, okay. So the movie, when it first came out, I thought, what is this? This is insane. This is dumb. It's a terrible movie. I hate it. It grew on me though, slowly but surely, to the point where I greatly enjoy watching it now. And so when this game became available, I think it was like $80, something like that. It was a splurge, but I went ahead and got it. This was like 2018 when I bought it.
It's $300 now.
Right. Exactly. Right. See, this is the funny thing, because I remember telling Martin, I think I might just go ahead and sell this game, because we've talked about it before. He actually has it too. I think he still has it. And he said, why? Don't do that. The game's going for like $300. You should just hang on to it. And you can't find it anymore. It's out of print. I thought, oh, well, okay. Well, I'll keep it anyway. And I actually have the expansion Legend of Lopan. So I've played it a few times and I absolutely adore it. There's got dice rolling mechanism to it where you roll to determine what actions you're going to take, whether it's moving and fighting or investigating. The whole first act, there's 2 acts to it. The first act is you're just running around Chinatown trying to pump your stats up because you want to get built up, get the right equipment so you can face Lopan in his lair, which is when you get to that point, you flip the board and you're in the lair and you're fighting not only him, but the 3, I don't know if they're gods. I can't remember. Thunder, rain, and lightning, I believe. They're very strong characters. So you need to be built up to the point to be able to face them and then finally defeat the main bad guy, of course. I adore it just because it's a very, very close rendition of the movie, which again grew on me a great deal. I will not ever let go of this game, I don't think, because it's always a fun thing. It's got paragraphs to it. It's got story-driven aspects to it as well. It's rich, and I enjoy it greatly.
It caught me off guard. I've seen
Why is
that
that?
game when it came out.
Oh.
And I completely overlooked it. I didn't think a thing about it.
See, yeah. And I wondered if I should include it just because it's ridiculously expensive and hard to find now. But it's my number one, so I got to go with it. So
I'll have to. I'm going to BGG here in a couple of weeks, so I have seen it there in the library. So I will play it.
There you go. Okay.
So my number one is I'm going back to my war game. So
B-17. No, I'm kidding.
No. This one is B-17 on steroids.
Uh-oh.
Actually, this is a game that I came across playing when I was getting back into gaming. A particular brand of game called DVG, Dan Viersen Games. He makes a lot of solo games. And he has a particular different types of series that he does. It's basically a system. You learn this one system, kind of like the coin system. You just pick the theme that you want. And so he had like some card-based games called like War Fighter, and then he had his leader system. And his leader system is basically various different ages throughout the world. Like there might be Field Commander Napoleon. Was the Field Commander is another vein of his system. So you play Napoleon through this era, or Alexander the Great. Well, that's what got me into playing some of his other aircraft games, and one of them was Phantom Leader, which I fell in love with, and then which led me to my number one, which I feel like is his masterpiece, and it's to me it's Top Gun in a box. It's Thunderbolt Apache Leader.
Nice.
And so 2012 release, and Thunderbolt Apache Leader is exactly what it sounds like. You are a wing commander of a Thunderbolt aircraft bomber type plane and an Apache helicopters, as well as the etc. There's tons of other different planes that you have. And so you pick a conflict, a certain type of battle that's going to be taking place, and you have to manage everything from like a regimental command standpoint down to the individual pilots. And so what kind of missiles and armaments are you going to give your planes? You're going to buy planes. You're going to recruit your pilots. And all your pilots, again, with this beautiful system that I don't know why nobody else seems to focus on, of your pilots being able to be upgraded and become stressed. And so you have certain pilots that they all have the Top Gun nicknames like Maverick and Iceman and junk like that. They all have different stats. Some of them shoot faster than others. Some of them are better under stress. Some of them are just better at various other things. You have a certain amount of points. You're recruiting pilots. You're buying planes. You're buying armaments. And then you're becoming under attack. And so there's this board that shows all the random events that take place that kind of hinder you and the enemy battalions that are moving towards you. And you have to select missions and go out on those missions to destroy these various enemy placements. And that's when the fun begins, where you have this hexagon board in front of you, where you're flipping over tiles and putting out enemies and flying your planes and doing missions. And it's even better because if you get on BGG and download all the various supplement material that they have, you get to kind of manage your pilots a little bit better, and you can name them and all this mess. And then what ends up inadvertently always happening is a story that unfolds of your pilot getting hit. And he does this thing in the leader series of you put all these damage markers or tokens into a opaque cup, and you just reach into it and you pull out, and this is, you took major damage, draw from this bag, or you took minor damage, draw from here, and you pull out a chit and it says, this is what's happened. This is the damage that your plane took. And you end up always losing a pilot eventually, which is devastating. And that just adds to the whole moment, like in Top Gun, where Goose, talk to me, Goose, and Goose doesn't make it. It's like that. It's that heart-wrenching moment of, why did this have to happen? Because in one of these little heavy damage cups is just a token that just says death. It's just the death token. And it's thrown in there amongst 60 other tokens. And so you have this 1 in 60 chance of pulling this thing out of there every time you take massive damage. And you think to yourself, I don't worry about taking massive damage because I can survive it. What's the chances of me pulling that shit? And it will happen. And it will happen to your best pilot. And you'll crash a plane because you're flying stupid, or you'll get shot down by the enemy. And I mean, it's just absolutely, and it's, each mission doesn't take about 15 minutes to run, but it takes like 30 minutes of sitting there to plan it out because you're so neurotic about what's going on. And the campaign can take you hours. And it's just, I've never played a game that is as all encompassing of a topic. Like all these games are abstract to some degree, but this game is very much, okay, plan the big picture. Okay, now move down a little bit more and plan the logistics. Okay, now move down a little bit more, plan the strategy. Okay, now you're the guy flying the plane. You got to make a decision. Are you going to fly low and take a shot at this enemy emplacement, or are you going to go high and try to make it over this mountain? So you go from such a myopic viewpoint of the conflict down, and it's just such a, this is the game for me. It's been in my collection probably since 2015, and every time I bring it out, this is the game.
That is interesting. I agree. I almost put this on my list, this particular game. But you're talking about the DVG version, correct?
Correct. I haven't played. There's another version, isn't it?
Yes.
There's a
GMT.
GMT. I've not got to play yet. No.
They built that. Well, built it. They produced that in 1991, I think it was, and that was my first encounter with it. And it's a very similar system. I think Dan took it and ran with it and made it a much better system with what they have. And then there's all kinds of expansion blocks for it too. It's a fantastic game. I totally agree. It's interesting you mentioned leaders, and I should say, full disclosure, I put Pavlov's House on my list earlier. It's a DVG game, and I hesitated to do that just because I'm designing a leader game myself right now. It's going to be called B-52 Leader, and I'm still trying to get my notes together on it. It's kind of tough designing a board game, let me tell you. But I didn't want to make it look like I was trying to be a DVG shill or anything like that. But that game is fantastic, as is Phantom Leader and Sherman Leader and Thunder or Hornet Leader. And
I desperately want to play. Is it Sherman? I think Sherman Leader.
Sherman
that's
Leader.
Another one that I've heard great things about.
Tiger Leader is good too, but it had some issues at start. I can't remember what they were offhand now. This was years ago, but and I think Sherman Leader comes with an upgrade kit for Tiger Leader, like a component replacement kind of a thing. I don't know, but Sherman, if you had to choose one, I'd say just go with Sherman Leader, and if you love it, then try Tiger Leader. Anyway, yeah, every leader, every field commander game even are just, I love them, and I can't say enough good things about them. So, very good.
And yeah, that's, and I've still got Alexander Bagabi body at the field commander. I had field commander Napoleon back in the day, but all the leader series, I've had multiple of them. Phantom Leader is still amazing. I always recommend, if I had to recommend somebody getting into this type of solo gaming, Phantom Leader.
Absolutely.
Phantom Leader is the most accessible. There's tons of videos on it. It does this similar thing, but takes away a lot of the little the planning and so forth. You fall in love with that, then you get Thunderbolt, and that changes everything. Like, that just wrecks you when it comes to
Yeah, absolutely. I love Phantom Leader so much. I actually have the minis. I bought the minis for it.
Which there's no real purpose for that.
No,
because
none whatsoever.
But there's because they don't have the names on them. But it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. We've gone 2 hours now. I'm sure my wife is not happy with me at the moment, but whatever.
Well, this was important. This was good for your audience.
It's very good, and it makes me wonder if I need to split this into 2 episodes, or just keep it as one long mega episode.
Now, we've typically done that when we've done top 10s. They actually turned into being like, I'll do 5, Gabi does 5. Okay, there's 10 games. All right, we'll cut it in half and
That's
do
a good
part
point.
2. And so, like, you get to milk the audience a little bit.
Yeah,
like, hey, an hour, 2 hours, that's a long podcast.
That
and it adds some suspense.
If there's crossover, we only had one. I think Ambush that we both had on our list. Other than that, that's like 19 games that are
there you go.
Unique. Go. All right, well, I'll probably do that. I'll add a little outro to. I'm I'm still recording here. Because I'm going to do an outro here in a moment, but I'll do a different one for the part 1 and then do a different for the part 2, I guess. So, well, that is our top 10 list. And we had a little conversation. We might go ahead and split this up into 2, but you already know that because you're listening to it. So why am I even saying that out loud?
Yeah, don't edit it. Yeah, there's no need to edit this. I said absolutely nothing offensive in 2 hours.
That's true. You didn't say nothing offensive at all. Okay.
I said, see, yeah. Don't get me get me going.
And if Gabby ever listens to this, he's going to go, why did you let him talk like that? Why did you let him slip into that accent?
That's here. Well, that's my normal accent.
I meant the Herbert one.
Herbert. That's what I mean. Herbert. That's my normal accent. That's I have to fight to stop that. Yeah.
I understand. Trust me.
It cost me a lot of jobs. I used to drive a school bus. And they're like, no, you can't. They're like, you got to stop using that voice. This is my voice. Get on, children. And they're like, no. And I was like, no, this is my voice. I have to strain. And they wouldn't. I know. So that's just part of it. Did you watch that? Did you watch that? Was it a Dateline? It's not a disease. It's an injury that somebody could suffer that changes their accent.
No.
Okay.
I don't doubt it.
An elderly woman got into like a car wreck, and afterwards they thought she was just faking it, but her accent changed to like a foreign accent.
Huh.
And so it's like, and the reason I bring this up is that Gabi actually knew somebody that happened to in Arkansas. This guy lived in Arkansas. He was from Arkansas. I don't know if you know you're from the North, aren't you? The North.
Oh, how dare you? I was born in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
But I lived in Northern Virginia from 3 months of age, and then Texas from like 8 years old onward.
Well, your accent though is of the North.
Y'all got to understand that, don't they? I lived in Texas 40 years. So anyway, sorry.
But you have to. But this guy was from Arkansas. You know how those people sound. He had a car wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
No, I understand. Those people.
Those people, you know, they you know how they sound to themselves and to others, to their sisters. But he had a British accent after the car wreck. A legitimate British accent.
The brain is just such a thing. We just still don't know everything there is to know about it. And it's just amazing what one little thing can change, and it can just little thing. I mean, traumatic brain injury from a car accident is a big deal. I was a EMT among many other jobs back in the day. So yeah, you said you were in emergency management, so I'm sure you've
I was a paramedic for quite some time.
Yeah.
Actually, I just celebrated my 20 years of being national registered.
Wow.
Yeah. They keep a registry of all things, which is always joke about the other registries they keep, but they keep a registry of paramedics.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I did it for 4 years. I kept it up, and then it seemed that my son was born, and every call that I went on was a kid something, and it just tore at me. So eventually, you know what? I got to find a better job that pays better anyway.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I enjoyed my time,
but I always threatened to Gabi, if I ever get into a car wreck, even if I ever get into a car wreck, I'm just going to keep this. I'm just going to start with a voice. I'm going to pick a voice, and I'm just going to stick with it for at least 3 months.
And it's going to be Herbert. You know it is.
It's going to be her. Hello,
and it's not going to be because of an accident. It's going to be because by your choice, and you want everybody to think it's because of the accident.
Exactly.
When they go, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm going to talk in my normal voice now.
Switch it back, and just let it be a thing, and then just be like, I got healed.
Oh man!
Just driving my Elantra down the sidewalk, ran into a post, and just keep at it, and just let that be a thing, and then nobody can accuse me of they can't shame me for my brain injury.
Right, exactly, or that you like popsicles so much. So, well, that's hard to top there. I think I'm going to call it at this point, but I appreciate your time here, Jerry. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Solosaurus. We are, of course, as we mentioned, I've mentioned part of the Solosaurus, part of the Dice Tower Network, and I would implore you as well to go check out my other podcast, the Roll of Thunder podcast. It should be out there. And my dogs, thank you too. Thank you for that. We're going to come up with some more stuff, and maybe Jerry and I can do a top 10 worst games here and fill up a couple of episodes there. And if you ever need somebody on Board Game Snobs, let me know. I'd be happy to join. But I don't know you guys do guests that often, do you? Or at all?
Top 10 family games. Yeah, we do. Every once in a while. Yeah, Dan comes on. Dan Hughes comes on every once in a while. We've had all types of people on the show. So everybody we've had, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You get to War Games, let me know.
All right. We'll get you on there.
All right, perfect. All right, well, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate your time, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And we'll see you in the next episode.